Okay, so all good things must come to an end, but we were just talking a few minutes ago about IMSH 25 and its location and all of the new and keeping up with trends and really being a welcoming place for connectedness of novice and expert researchers. And there's such synergy. So for all of you who are novice or new, every time I go to IMSH, I have takeaways of if I could blend the perfect conference, right? I have many ideas and things of that nature, but it's just, I think that was one of my second simulation conferences that I went to that had over, like 300 people who attended. And it was just kind of overwhelming, but they break it down and you're going to hear, you're going to see, you're going to read about all kinds of concepts that we are learning through this course module. And I think that when you all are preparing as well, that for this course, if you decide to, whenever you decide to take your certification exam, that you can also have the opportunity to kind of see the research or reinforce it at IMSH as well. So we were just kind of commenting on that. So I'm Kelly Rossler, and I'm the facilitator for this course. So thank you very much for being along with me again. And as we move forward this week, I wanted to just kind of pause a minute and to see if y'all had questions regarding last week's domain 4 items. We're going to have another slideshow in a second. Okay, I'm going to just check the chat here just a minute. Okay, looks like we have a chat just going directly to Hannah. That would be great. So, right. Okay, so I'm going to get moving forward and welcome everybody to our last session. And it has been a journey with you all, and I appreciate the attention that you all have been kind of infused in learning how to embrace the modules, learning the resources. What does that look like for your learning style as well? And filling out your professional development form, all of those kind of break it down and put it together, the whole entire package that will help you best prepare for your professional journey. So I'm going to kind of start here. Let's see if my cursor works better this week. It was kind of going wackadoo and take me back and forth. So thank you all. So here's our kind of beginning slide that we share all the time, just kind of welcoming everybody. And thank you again for some dialogue about where you all are in your journey as well for preparing. And I think that we have folks who have attended before here. So if you are new, welcome as well. And we're really happy to have you here. I don't think there are any housekeeping announcements right now as we go through the actual slideshow and application sessions. We'll discuss some housekeeping items from last week that we had regarding accommodations and the exam. So we'll pop over to the website and then also look at the Moodle course where those resources are for the CHSE handbook, where it talks specifically about signing up when you're ready at your time for the taking the exam. So when we're thinking about this particular course, again, this is a statement that all the images presentation are royalty free, and you all have your screen names, however you would like to have those. So thank you very much. And also definitely please feel free throughout to enjoy having camaraderie here and also speaking to one another with your mics off. I know sometimes it can be where the internet access and things like that, if you have your video going or not, that could impact your visibility. And so please feel free to chat. I will break away sometimes to read the chat, and then I will kind of come back and I articulate out loud sometimes the chat as well. And feel free to unmute your faces, if you will, and really guide this session, this last session that we have today. So remember that domain 4 we finished up focused on those simulation resources and environments, and those are through the lens of that educator role. I know every time we start off a new session, I discuss, remember having your thinking cap on from the educator role. What are the responsibilities and roles within simulation program? Your frame should always be that educator role. So kind of keep in mind the certification is all about being that educator. So For those of y'all just kind of speaking about this domain, when you went back into your practice areas, did you all kind of think about some items that in this domain that you could reflect on and see very useful to your practice environments, or might have changed your thinking about simulation resources and environments within your programs that you would like to share?
Kelly, it's Ann. I just would say in the presentation that we had today that we had to listen to, are you talking about contingency plans and such, or have we not gotten there yet?
We haven't. I'm just kind of talking about simulation resources environments, but yes, we will talk about that. But you can definitely bring it up now if you'd like to share.
Well, I had an experience that I didn't really even realize was, something that actually worked out well for the learner, the students, but we lost power on campus.
Oh,
So we work with the high fidelity mannequins, and the nursing students are the associate level, and we lost all power. And not really even knowing the terminology, I ended up turning into an SP, somewhat of an untrained one, and just became an SP in the room. And it actually worked out really well. It was kind of liberating to be able to flex and move into a different mode just to make sure that the learning continued. Objectives, actually, the outcomes were perfect. It was absolutely the same as if we were using a mannequin. So it was very nice to get the process framed up and the terminology and the how to speak to it with this particular presentation.
perfect. That's excellent. Thanks so much, Anne, for sharing that because you actually have now an exemplar to put your mind to. This happened in your situation, but if I were the simulationist anywhere, we pick Anne up and put her in a different state or country, what would that look like if the power went out, right? And so, what if you have your thinking hat on as educator? It's fabulous to know that then those are reinforcing. Because if you kind of think as again, it's a learning journey. I joined when we had the Wizard of Oz, technique. I'm behind the curtain, but you don't see me. Yes, here I am again, right? So as science has changed, as we have been informed, as you all and colleagues have completed the research and we disseminated it at conferences that and publications, we are, identifying those best practices. So which is why when you're in the certification realm, we'll talk about too, getting certified and how do I maintain that, right? How do I keep, it's not one and done. It's that culture that you infuse throughout your practice the entire time. So I think, Anne, you can probably add that as maybe one of your exemplars when you're preparing and studying. And that might be an idea for colleagues here who are listening today or will be, who can attend the session, this live session itself. Okay, thank you. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at too was in simulation resources environments is kind of remember we talk about the big picture items, we cover similar topics, we went over some activities. We also wanted to also move forward to kind of see how does the focus of simulation fit, whether you are in academia, whether you are in the hospital-based organization, whether you're in a different system. What does that look like simulation for where you are, where you practice? When we think about simulation programs, improvements, and things of that nature, and we think about resources and environments, how are we going to manage those risks? What are we looking at for material problems? What are those resources that we may not realize that we need? We just had a great example pre-discussion about building a new sim center, kind of starting from scratch. What are those operational items that we need to have? How do we talk about sustainability? What does that look like? So even though we're possibly what in the business, if you will, of education, of extended thinking, of research, we have that learner teacher exchanges and those simulation based education and activities. We also need to think about, well, how is this program? How does the curriculum fit within our simulation program? We've learned that last semester, but then also, how do I keep my program viable, right? What are some factors that impact our operations? Do I have a sim ops specialist there? What about budget factors? All of those business items, if you will, you need to have that mindset on as well. Okay, so When we think about kind of moving forward with this area, we have a new application because the exam that we speak about is application. And this is all about, just as Anne was saying too, regarding unexpected things would happen. So here's the scenario that we're looking at. We have this simulation scenario, and the mannequin loses connection and stops breathing. The learners think that the patient now needs to be resuscitated. The original learning objectives were designed to focus on patient communication and assessment. What should the simulation educator do now? What are y'all thinking? We had one great example just a few minutes ago. Has anything like that happened with you all regarding, or if you're thinking about the mannequin may need to be resuscitated? The learners think because of the issue, it lost connection, all of a sudden the mannequin stopped breathing, right? We know from sound curriculum, we go back to our objectives. We know we're not trying to trick our, right, have something unexpected happen and cause the students to have this disillusion or that fidelity and realism breakup. So here is a great comment. So I'm going to read from our comments. Thank you so much, Jessica. We have that sometimes they have a charge nurse to approach where the instructor will go into the room to assist with redirection. Perfect. So when we think about that, we have the opportunity to remember we never really take away from a scenario and we don't add extra to it. We want to go ahead and stick with whatever our circle back to those objectives that we're looking at. So if we have that unexpected event such like that, that is an excellent example where we can go ahead and get back in on track. And sometimes we call these different types of items of lifesavers. So throw me a lifesaver, right? So not the whole you're drowning in the water at all, you're having an event. It is a lifesaver of if this happens, just like if we were pilot testing, we could think of these things. What if the lights go out? Well, how do we get back and retarget to our objectives and how could this be done? So this could be that embedded charge nurse, right? The possibly that person is there to say, let's go ahead and redirect or provide information that the monitors are no longer working, secondary to a situation within the environment. We're going to go ahead and give you some vital signs, and this is what's happening. Okay, so that way they can go ahead and fix the electrical problem and kind of move forward. So yeah, Ashley, stop the sim, fix the problem so you don't get away from your objectives. So we can go ahead and take that pause moment potentially and reset the objectives for the learner to say, we're going to pause here. This is what's happening to give them an actual information. If, and another example of kind of in the scenario or a lifesaver, we could possibly think about maybe a biomedical tech that comes in and says there's an electrical problem and reconnects the mannequin. But you stick within those kind of objectives as well. So what Anne was kind of, I think, getting to, or maybe not. So many of us have, or centers have control rooms, and in the control room centers, you could possibly some from outside of the scenario. So a nurse going in, a charge nurse, a biotech person, somebody happening and entering that teaching learning environment would kind of be within that scenario. But outside of the scenario, we could possibly look at the voice over the speaker, right? So it's the voice above or the coach or the virtual assistant, if you will. And it could enter in and provide those redirect cues that Laurencia provided. So patient responses, the patient is doing this, stopping the scenario, restarting it, and getting back on track. So those are all great examples in there. And there has been great literature on as a resource about lifesavers. So those are those planned kind of interventions before the scenario that allow participants to actually achieve the learning goals of that specific scenario. In this case, it was communication and assessment. And then we're able to kind of make certain that the learners stay on track and they're not derailed from the learning environment. Any other thoughts about this area?
I had one, and it was sometimes when we've had technological difficulties, that suspended disbelief really gets a little more disrupted.
Okay.
And trying to get them to rein them back into, like, if we have to send a technician in, or if it was, a glitch and we just have to hit the reset, that's a little challenging.
Yeah. And part of it is it's almost kind of like if you were hypnotized or something, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, we're doing this now and I have to recenter, refocus. Because remember the balance that we want to do with our learners and have with our learners, no matter who they are, is that psychological safety component, right? We want that well-being and that safe environment to occur. And it could be that they're just okay, they're maybe stressed or already and or have anxiety, or depending on their role of just be taking that appropriateness of an educator tone of going in and kind of saying, okay, we have this situation here. But the main thing about this scenario here is for you all is to kind of think about what happens during these events, what are the specific items that I need to be thinking about, and how do we get back to those learner objectives correctly. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts about this application? Okay, thank you for sharing. So these are, oh, there we go again. I like to show this slide because it gives us some items to consider that maybe you didn't think about. We had some great caption dialogue just a few minutes ago in the chat about audio issues. So there could be a control issue with the patient. They can't hear. Sometimes the environment is set up in your area where the volume isn't enough and you really can't hear the patient or the simulator. Can I ask how many of y'all might have been practicing with the simulators when they had the compressors attached to them? Me? Anybody else? So we've advanced. Yeah. Okay, Kat, would you like to share? Did that impact at all, like audio or hearing or?
Well, it when we were using the old Medi that had the full like umbilical cord.
Okay.
So it was also any kind of the wires, any kind of compressors and whatever yes, it was noisy, but we also found that sometimes students trying to maneuver would trip over the umbilical cord.
Okay.
The
Now
other
that's
thing that
good.
we were using was the Harvey, which is a heart sound simulator, which does have movement. And we were having problems with the stethoscopes connecting properly and the students not hearing it. And we actually had to get the stethoscope replaced. And technology definitely can go, if something goes wrong, it can definitely go wrong.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I recall that we would always hear the compressors turn on and off, and they're all, what is that, right? So that gets us way back to our orientation to the environment, and we also have technology that we need to, as educators, keep up with, but it's also changed so much that those environmental concerns, so that physical space environment as well as well-being, that ties directly into that. And I think this content here is really speaking towards what can go wrong when we have that the educator who is prepared to say, I'm proactive and it's okay. We haven't had that, happen before, but being open to, okay, we have this plan. This is our action plan. If this happens or that happens, what occurs? And it's always great. I was touring a facility when I was at a recent conference, and in the facility, they had their procedural manual that we're going to talk about soon. And they also had procedural manuals and education for what your students, and as part of that orientation. Like if this happens, this is what we will do, or this occurs, kind of like if you have an event in a hospital setting or an academic area, say, I would say a fire alarm, right? What are those things that we do that we take care of? So if we're proactive to minimize the effects that might go wrong, that's your contingency plan. So have those type of things in place, and you're not the only one who needs to know it, right? So if you're out for the day and you come back and, well, this happened, we didn't know what to do, your whole team has to be aware as your role as an educator leader to disseminate that too. So thank you for that. And I think with a contingency plan, it's if we think of crew rescue type of resources, environments, this is kind of like in a disaster or something happening. We want to look at, from that context, if we have an emergency or something catastrophic happens, right? Lives might not be lost and the simulation goes wrong, but the learning opportunity itself may be lost and sustainability may be impacted. So we really want our learners to have that learning occur, but we also want to make sure that we constantly don't have these things that happen and we're not addressing them because that ultimately impacts our educational program. When we think about technology, also think about your technology itself. We also have persons, right? So we need to think about people being aware of how to connect items. So if you have one person, an IT person who does things for you, make sure your team is aware. Because I used to be the person of one and go in and set up and do and technology and fix it person and everything, right? So I learned best that way because I could troubleshoot items, write scenarios, however that looks. But it's the same thing as what is not within your control. And you may have some issues of contingency plans that you helped mitigate circumstances or so you don't have issues in the future. So kind of thinking about people, places, and things or your technology and things that could happen. When we think about this for this simulation, we have our technology, we have our equipment that we also had. Kat gave a great example as well that could possibly not operate as expected. And then things beyond our control, which Anne shared. Thank you very much about the power outage of weather. Okay. Questions about this type of information?
If I may add, it's such, when I think about resources and environmental management, I'm so confused with it. But after listening to the lecture, this last presentation, it kind of brings me back to, okay, I know this, but I don't know that that's all that is consists of. So like this problem of unexpected situations, I have a place that I kind of stated it, step by step what to do if the monitor is not connecting or you suddenly there's something happened. But still, I'm still having problem of faculty following those guidelines of how to troubleshoot these issues.
Okay.
So I don't know what else, like last week I had an experience when I walked in to check on them and they said, oh my God, the mic is not working, the audio is not working, what is going on? Like everything is, I said, okay, calm down. Calm down. What happened? How did you start the scenario to come and understand that when getting to the patient's monitor, she just clicked on another room. So whatever is doing in her room is from another place. So, all those little things, if we can share it with our members so they know not to panic, like follow up whatever step that you have out there for them to use to address such situation when they come up, that would be helpful.
Yes, I think that's a fabulous example. And I think if we take this to the extent of, when you're putting yourself in the place of, hey, you're learning professionally to assist in what would I do, and then we also are learning to say, well, what would I do? What were the correct actions as an educator? And you really highlighted several things that you can do, such as that team training, reinforcing, also going back to being calm and using that educator, hat and mindset to kind of redirect your team and provide that educational team format and feedback, right? So when we think about feedback, when we think about communication, debriefing, those type of things too, what does it look like for our team meetings, our team debriefings for a scenario? So sometimes for my facilities, we have debriefing with the educators, and we also have then debriefing with the team after our scenarios to say, okay, kind of what went well, right? What do we need to improve upon? Or this was unanticipated. Thank you very much for you doing this. So So that way we also ensure that everybody, kind of like an operating room team, right? A critical care team, a team who are practicing together and communicating well together, can have that forward momentum. But sometimes happen where persons are impacted and they're just, oh, I don't know what to do. And that panic can set through, and it's okay. And you provided that reassurance and redirected to, well, these are these resources to empower, your staff or your colleagues. So that was great. But what you brought to my attention, Laurencia, is so people are predictable, right? So if we think about our student learners and they're involved in the simulation, or you have a possibly standardized patients or participants, and you have learners, you have a simulation going on. What if something happens, like an unexpected visitor shows up into the simulation? What's been your guys' backup plan, or if this has happened to you, to share?
It depends. If it's a high stake situation where the students are testing, maybe I will kind of share a video with them, or a video of the lab if that's what they want to see, or a video of where the students are in action, doing scenario in the lab. So that's what I would do. But if it's ordinary simulation, maybe I have to allow them if they are the high stake people that give us money. So definitely I will try to accommodate them.
So what you touched on a few things are, we really want that integrity of that psychological safety and then also physical safety to be kind of um, have that plan in place, and using that mindset to make sure that we have that experience for the learner. And if something like that does happen, then it could be that we end up having a situation where we go through and say, maybe we have the pause moment, right? Kind of have that backup plan once again, or contingency plan if that happens, redirect that visitor who came in. I'll give kind of an example of when building a simulation building or a program in a new building. One of the administrators wanted to have a big window where passersby could see the students doing simulations in education, so they could see it in action, right? So if you think about that, we're like, oh no, we can't. We need to keep the integrity of that program, that teaching learning experience, just as with that education mindset, and not have others come through the hall and look at them, even if it's formative or summative, in their journey. So if we kind of think about different things, that Jessica has a great idea of when things don't go according to plan, whether someone wanders in technology, they tend to discuss the event in debrief and try to relate it to a real life situation. That's perfect, right? Some things are just beyond our control, and traffic flow through and in and out of our simulation facilities can occur, power loss, construction, noise, unanticipated events. So having that contingency in place, having those lifesavers in place can impact our team resilience, and also carry over into our debriefing and the meaningful time that we have with our students to debrief them too. So I appreciate the great conversation on that. So any other questions about kind of just focusing on those resources, making certain that we have a contingency plan, we have some lifesavers, but we also have an idea of, these are some events that could occur within the sim, and how can we anticipate those and have an action plan in place? Okay, I'm going to kind of move forward to our next slide. So again, this kind of speaks towards being proactive planning during challenging, occurrences. So having that occur in the first place is preventable, possibly, right? So if we think about it, checking our technology back and forth. Did somebody leave and now all the batteries are gone? So I work sometimes with telehealth presence robots, and the life of the battery is about 4 hours. So I'm doing some research in cold environments, and the life of the mannequin charge is greatly diminished in that environment. So having that, looking at the piloting again, Preventative maintenance as well. So that is one not to be overlooked, to make sure that you have the great relationship with vendors and have those taken care of as well. So we can try to do everything we can do as a simulation educator to help problems from occurring in the first place, of preparing and such. But again, we get back to that contingency plan. Okay. So we're going to move on to a different type of application. There's actually kind of three here. And this is all about managing risk, right? When I think of as educator, I really lean into my practice as in the hospital sphere or risk management, ethics, HIPAA. I kind of put those type of governing bodies, ethical kind of risk management program things of what to do, not to do, those safety principles. And it was interesting last week. I was rehearing our video from last week, and I was like, I think I pronounced the paralytic the way we do used to use it in one of our simulation labs, because we had practice medications, right? So we were working on look-alike, sound-alikes, but we didn't want probably our attendees to actually have the actual medication. So when we think about risk management in a simulation program, what would y'all like to share about how do you use medications during simulation? And I'll share really quick with you too that in the manual for some of the study prep questions, there were like 59. I did a word search on medications, like 59 different entries in there. So different types of challenges. What do we think about using equipment, medication, things of that nature? So what is your response about the use of practice medications during simulation? If you'd like to share. What are some ideas that you use for that risk management portion and safety?
So this is Anne. I could tell you that our program sometimes relies on donations from local hospitals that have supplies that have expired. That helps us keep our lab fees a little bit more under control with the students. And sometimes we'll find medications that are in this donation, which is it's kind of challenging because there shouldn't be any meds that have been delivered, but somehow, some way, we have had medications, but we have a policy now where we cannot use actual true pharmaceuticals in our simulation setting. We have to use the Practi medications that we purchase for this kind of stuff, because we've been sent some things from crash carts like atropine and epinephrine and things that have been expired that it would just be too unsafe for our novice learners. So that's one of our rules in our lab. We cannot use real medications.
Excellent, Anne. And I think we also had responses of looking at labeling, right? So, and it really kind of does depend on where you are. So think about your policies, your procedures. Kat has a good one where, is it happening in the hospital different from the sim center? Are they simulation, make sure they're labeled, not for human use. And also, sometimes you can create different labels for the medications or remove the actual medication and put sterile water in there. Also, there are different manufacturing companies have those different types of doses. So I have been in both areas where in the hospital setting doing simulation, and we do have the policies, procedures of use of real medication, the containers, looking at draining the actual content and refilling it just in case somebody poked themselves, something happened. What are insight to, what about medication reconciliation formats, those type of things. So there is a dichotomy here of not really dichotomy, a difference of I really appreciated the fact of if you're in a sim center, that's an education center versus I'm having a simulation at the bedside with a mannequin in the hospital setting or a training center. Well, regardless, think about those safety things. Think about human use labels. Think about connecting back to your policies and following policies that are a part of your organization as well. So we have possibly different colors, a use for different colors can be good. That's a good idea too. Does using medications or not using them, practice medications during sim, does it change your pre-brief at all? The way you pre-brief, do you think? Yeah, we had as y'all are thinking about that, Kat noted that one of the products companies from Laerdal Medical has a 3G simulator, and they have the RFID type tags and things of that nature. So when you put it close to the mannequin, it um, picks up on that, right? It reads it and corresponds. And I used one of those one time where it said you applied oxygen, you applied oxygen. Like didn't apply oxygen. Somehow, some way, the little device. They're just maybe an inch long and small, but they say what they are, oxygen, O2, what have you. It fell down into the mannequin somehow, and it was picking it up from before. So that's where that maintenance comes from. So Jessica, great. Yes, need to review the Pyxis in pre-brief as well. Yeah, so when we think about this, that's a great connected piece of when you're looking at practicing with simulation medications, when you're looking at a defibrillator, which is the next query, those are equipment things that we can have an injury or something, an adverse event occur that impacts the safety of our learners. So main thing is that orientation, our pre-briefing, that we have those times where we share with those students. We want the realism here. We want that fidelity, right, to occur. How can we do this? And in this setting, these are the medications that we have in our simulation hospital, our simulation program that we're doing, making certain that you do, kind of follow that policy. Okay. Yeah, so that everybody kind of knows that those aren't real medications too. Okay. So, and the other thing too, sometimes people being people, I've had students before leave with things in their pockets, right? It's like everybody emptied their pockets from the sim. We would not want them accidentally going home with a medication or a medication that wasn't correct, with no medication in it. Say if it was an EpiPen, oh, I have this EpiPen here, and they use it, it doesn't work, right? Because it's not filled with the medication. So those things are really great. So there is a great Hannah put into this area is the Society of Simulation Resource Merchandise safety labels. So thank you so much, Hannah, for placing that there. So if you want an extra resource, in that link is great. So what about a professor asks for a copy of debrief recording? So somebody out of the blue who's a colleague professor of yours says, hey, you know what? My students were in there today. I want to go ahead and have a copy of the debrief. What do you say to this type of situation? Nope. Okay. Why nope?
They're not trained. They weren't part of the simulation, so they're not trained as a debrief debrief facilitator.
Excellent. That's an excellent point there. What are some other things that you all are thinking about? Because they may have a different lens, right? They're looking at it as zooming in on possibly their student or something. We want to make sure that their again, their rights are protected, our learners. Anybody else have an idea about this one?
They may not know the objectives of what the simulation was in the beginning. So if they weren't there and they didn't actually see and understand the simulation, then they shouldn't be debriefing. I mean, they might be able to see the recording, but again, we don't know what they're using it for. If they just want a copy just to gain insight, that's different. But if they want to have a copy to discuss with students or do their own debrief, that's it. You have to know what they want to do with the information.
Okay, yeah. And it all comes down to kind of danger, danger, Will Robbins. That was a movie show that I used to watch. And it's a warning of, hey, what's your policy and procedure? We have some great comments in here of being aware of a simulation educator. Sorry about that. What about your policies and procedures? So this was a time where you would rely on that. You would also want to make certain that you are does your program outline criteria for the use of debrief content itself? Do your learners have an agreement for like photos? If it's a high stake OSCE, is that written in part of the simulation there so they have a clear expectations of what will be occurring? What about the debrief? When are they, how are they stored? What about the IT protectedness, right? We wouldn't want somebody to have to be able to access those videos and use them inappropriately from a data breach. So where are they stored? When are they destroyed? Those type of things. So going back to your policies and procedures. So yeah, it could be considered a non-safe environment if the students know the professors are observing and making judgments, right? Um, so when we think of the OSCE, that is observed, structured content, kind of looking at an exam where it's an exam that's high stakes and it's a high risk type situation where, say, a healthcare professional is learning to put in a central line and they need to demonstrate that after so many practices of formative that now this is the one where they get checked off on and it's a pass fail. And so it's observed with kind of a checklist type format or a grading type system in place. I have had programs that have had students from different online learning video record themselves doing a procedure, say a head to toe assessment, and then send that video in or upload it to a file server for faculty to look at. But all of that information and those requirements are fully provided and that information is shared. Thanks for asking that. So really it gets back to the policies, procedures, having an idea of what does your program state, what are the criteria for use, and also, you know, as you said, back to that learner safety. Okay. So kind of following up on this, and it's, I think this led right into a previous discussion that we had, is our center has received a donation to support simulation. There are multiple stakeholders interested in using simulation for their learners. What are some considerations upon which you, the simulation educator, would make purchase recommendations to your leadership? So this is really looking at, if you want to share, you have a donation. We're looking at stakeholders are interested. So we have a, you know, fund the need type program. When you're thinking about your simulation hat, what are some considerations that you take into place of how to budget and how would you use, make recommendations for purchases? Do you go out and just say, yes, we have this money, I'm going to buy the most expensive simulator, right? Or what have you. So how do you all um, react to that? Let's see. What are some things that you would do? So if I'm thinking about possibly making recommendations for leaderships, it could be that I use data that was collected on as I'm in a program of study. In my program itself, what are the needs of the program that we have? Maybe we have a pediatric simulator that we've used and our vendor's maintenance is up and expired and we need a new type of simulator. Maybe the strong simulation team. Yeah, maybe it's a strong simulation team that we really need some money to invest in our facilitators, right? Invest in our team itself. And it could be the stakeholders. They may want to actually designate and name a simulator. So we have had that happen before with some of our pediatric simulators, where we have a kind of a suite, and then this is the so-and-so name, right? Um, so we kind of think about that, the objectives, our level of learners to go back to, if we're thinking about technology, will it benefit more than one specialty, or we just need this for maybe our colleagues who are in women's health or so, or advanced practice? Can we use the modalities in different ways that we then it's benefiting multiple program needs as well? What about the realism for our learners and fidelity? So getting back to those core concepts too, of making those choices as well. And then how about the use of equipment itself? So is it going to be a lot of equipment that takes up a lot of time and resources? If we don't have the infrastructure for something that might be new or that others are trying, but we're not ready for that in our institution or your institution as a simulation educator, what would you do kind of get back to those basics? So kind of think about things about data evaluations, programmatic evaluations, learner evaluations, your team evaluations, the scenarios you use, the groups that you move through, the learners that you connect with, technology that might be dying or old and needs refurbed or replaced. Okay. So that this is putting the kind of the hat on as a leadership person in your simulation setting. Okay, so here's another one, kind of leads in from the last slide about data. Data assists us with that, what, return on investment of our simulation. So how is it that you all in your programs track data? And who do you share it with? Okay, we have some that are cost to student ratio, software licensing fees. I recall going to some conferences where we had a new kind of innovative area was our data management, right? So if I look at inventory and supply coming in, coming out, some things that you could look at program data, some are homegrown solutions, if you will, for an Excel file sheet or program management, something to that effect, or a, quick in program. So different types of things are tracking how you capture data for your program, how you disseminate the program data, and who you kind of share that with. So at certain points of time, I would think that if you wanted to hire a new staff person or a new faculty member, these are the number of hours we do each week. These are the number of students impacted. This is the total amount of time to create the scenarios, practice, things of that nature. So having that built in so they can see, well, these are the numbers. This is the throughput of persons we educate each year, and how do we go from there? Let me see what else you all have. Okay, so we have a recommendation of kind of student grades, leadership is who our stakeholders as well. Learning space was a recommendation. Okay, so be thinking about this application idea of how do you track data? How is it done? How do you track the data? And then how do you share the information? Okay. Annual reports as well. Yeah. So if you want a return on investment or a model, if you develop a model of practice for your leadership model or a plan, how does data and program improvement and quality improvement help with your program? So how does that, you kind of have to have that management piece taken care of, right? So that business acumen side. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick overview of some of the study principles of the exam itself. So let me back up a minute. Do y'all have any questions about some of the content we just went over? I really like the video as well this week too. Um, okay. So Kat, did you have a question about reliability itself?
No, I was saying that that's some of the data that we track in
Oh,
learning
okay.
space is biserial statistics for each question item for our checklists, et cetera. So we can do case reliability and validity and case
Okay.
analysis, item analysis, which is
Okay.
really nice.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you really do delve down. So in a lot of programs, when you think about it, where do you consider you evaluate your educators? So a peer, so 360 evaluation for your program, from student evaluation to peer evaluation to kind of improve programming. And then also those, deeper dives of kind of looking at specific information that will lend support for how reliable is our program and what are our learners, how does it impact, patient or our learner outcomes. Okay, excellent. Thank you all. What a great discussion. Okay, so you all have prepared. Your personal journey is I'm signing up tomorrow, or I've got myself paced out through January 4th, I think, is the last day that you have access to Moodle. You've turned in your survey. You've done some practice questions that came from turning in your survey to complete the class, and you're gearing up your mindset for the exam. So for this exam, just kind of be prepared too that there's 115 questions. 100 of those are scored. So the remainder are those that are in beta tests. So those are the ones they kind of put in there to let's test these questions out to see how they will work so that if we need to exchange based on that reliability and validity data that we have, what do those look like? Time limit is 2 hours. So that's a time limit. There is extensions for accommodation. So we had a query about that last week. And when you go on to the Society for Simulation website, as well as the handbook that is available on the CHSE preparedness and the manual, the handbook to prepare, it talks about in the application itself, we'll have a different form feature that you can fill out information regarding accommodations. If you have questions, you can also contact the education at Societies for Simulation as well. So again, must be formally requested in advance. You can't show up and say, but I have accommodations. So that has to be planned, carefully planned for, to make certain that they have prepared for you to ensure that you have that environment that supports you best for taking the exam. One of the things here, again, they're all application based. So we've had application based questions in here. And so when we kind of move forward with that, there's no true false, there's no matching, and there's no all of the above. And Hannah put the link into the coordinator at simcertification.com is who you would reach out for regarding any questions of the exam itself. So because we don't know those questions about the exam. Okay, so that's helpful to know. No, none, all of the above, or select all that apply. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, close your eyes for a minute. There we go. Read the question, right? So you all are educators or your standardized patients in the roles, or your administrators. Put your hat on about test taking strategies. Use the practice exam after the survey. Use your resources from this course and look at the question in its entirety, the entire stem, and then those distractor responses. Pace yourself and then place yourself. So kind of think like that educator, right? Oh, this happened last week. What did we do? No, what would an educator do in this instance? Think universally. Think Cohort. Think of those universal things, ABCs. Hey, are you okay? Help, right? Those algorithms that you use as well. So what would those look like? Eliminate those distractors. So get those down, and then don't read into the no analysis paralysis. Don't read into it and try to make up a whole new story that isn't discussed in there. They just kind of say, don't get in the weeds, right? So that's that analysis paralysis of overthinking it as well. Move through the exam without thinking too hard, going back and forth. There had been, and I do believe there is still an opportunity within the exam to pause, like highlight a question, but that would be a question for the sim certification people. When I took it, we had that opportunity to go, let me click that and kind of go back for that. So remember that Society for Simulation endorses resources. So these are ones, again, that are resources for you. When you think about the familiarizing yourself for testing as well, use that verb sheet. I love the dictionary. Helps you with that terminology of what is what. We just had Kat talk about reliability. Remember, reliability and fidelity is discussed differently throughout. Reliability could be a data collection instrument, right? Is it reliable to measure that concept? So when we think about the skills, knowledge, and attitudes verb list, all the descriptors in the 2024 examination blueprint may not be found in the list. Okay. If the term's not on the list, assume that is a Bloom's taxonomy application level. Okay. In each of these here, we had a question about the healthcare simulation standards of best practice, which is an Axle product. We had the defining excellence in simulation programs book. This might be a book that you have that's your library has, or you might have for your sim team. This is a big book. It is the kind of the nuts to bolts. So just kind of don't go over don't re-go over depth into each minuscule detail of that. Stick within kind of that, what the blueprint domains that we offer you, those practice questions, those rationales, review those type of things. Okay. All right, any questions that you might have? I'm going to stop sharing and kind of go from there.
Hey, when should we expect to receive the survey?
That's a Hannah question.
I'm sorry,
She,
cut out a little
no,
bit. Can you repeat that?
when can we expect, when can everybody expect to receive the survey? Does it at the end in January when they have decreased access to Moodle, or when would that occur?
Nope, it'll go out next week.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that question. We've got another minute, and y'all, thank you so much for coming every day and sharing your experiences, as well as having the confidence to network. You can stay connected with one another. I will be hopping on and off each week into the Moodle space just to see if there's any other dialogue or email type information, or sharing of information or resources that I could help with. But in the meantime, hopefully we'll see some of y'all at IMSH, and definitely email us, me and or definitely Hannah, regarding successes for your examinations, and kind of tap into those resources that have been provided externally too, as you all have different things that are happening in your workspaces that you might need support with, and then delve into these resources from this course that have been thoughtfully prepared for you all to help prepare you on your journey for either certification or kind of a re-review of where your next professional practice is headed.
If we had some questions about the application process itself, who should we, who would be a good place to ask that? I just had a couple questions about the narratives that they're asking.
Yeah, so that would be the coordinator at simcertification.com.
Okay. Do you have any advice on maybe how long they should be, or should it be just a general, like, I guess, I don't know if you've had looked at the application lately.
What do you mean, how long? I apologize.
So they're saying that, there's three basic questions, explain simulation that your activities that you're doing, how do you advocate for your sim center, and then scholarship activities. I guess it's just kind of like a free range, like a free narrative. Like, are they looking, I guess my question is how detailed do those need to be? Are they to be like, a half a page? Do they want general bullet points, or do they want to get into how well each, how does building an activity relate to what, the KSAs?
So that is definitely going to be a question for that coordinator email.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. No, that's fine.
Our firewall is so big and so thick with our accreditation that I don't even know what the application looks like. So what you're talking about, I've never seen it before.
Oh, really? Because I actually, I have, really funny, I kind of screenshot the questions themselves. And so they're very, very general. And it's kind of, it's not that, they don't really give you very much guidance on what they're looking for. So that's kind of why I actually have an example, if you know, I mean.
I cannot see it.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah, we wouldn't be able
So
to see
because
it.
of our, so,
Yeah.
and the reason
We
for
don't
it,
want you to share us with us.
Okay.
I,
That was my question. It's like,
yeah,
I mean, I have it, I can just read the question to you. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a very general, describe this, whatever. And I
Mhm.
just wasn't sure like how, in terms of description, it didn't, it was kind of very vague. And I guess it could me, it's very, depending on how you read it, you could be very direct or you could list like however many. The other thing is that in a time frame, like I've been doing this in my one role for 10 years, so I could list tons of different things, but obviously like the time frame of when you're discussing these activities, I'm assuming are kind of like the within the 2 year kind of
Yeah.
novice kind of.
Right. I think I would definitely email, and then I would, if you start filling out those forms, then be concise, succinct, but provide enough context to then support what the question is asking. But
Yeah.
I would reach out to them, because then if they all of a sudden say there's a 500 character limit, then you're like, what? Well, I wrote all of
Right.
this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I would start with that, and then you can edit, and then while you're waiting for the response to kind of come back. But they're very responsive on that side too.
All
Good
right, thanks. That's
question.
that's just kind of what I wanted to know. So
Yeah.
thanks.
And
and
make sure you all notify your, persons who are going to be your attesting to you, right? So you need, in the application side, we already talked about candidates, having recommendations, right? So make sure that you follow up with that, and that to follow those guidelines too, so somebody has an idea of what to expect, and how you would recommend them attest to your abilities. It could be a specific area or something else. So kind of look at that, the blueprint, and then what the question's asking too, so that the way they have plenty of time to make sure that they write the best, support letter for you all.
And Kat, I want to say really quick, I hope you don't feel like we're pushing you off, but the reason that we kind of can't tell you is that they specifically for our accreditors, we can't know what it looks like because we can't teach or tell you what to fill out, and especially if maybe you're not, I'm not saying that you're not, but maybe to somebody who's not really qualified to test, if we were to tell them what to put in there, then if they came back and their references were like, well, maybe they're not actually qualified, but then they were like, no, you told me to put in here X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
So I just want you
Totally.
to
No,
know
yeah,
that we're
totally
not pushing you off.
understand. Yeah, yeah, you want to be a third party. It's
Yes.
no, I don't feel like you were. It
Okay,
was I just
perfect.
didn't know if
Sorry.
you even had the ability to. So that's kind of
No,
my
I wish we
yeah.
could kind of fill in a little bit more for you, but just our accreditation, we have
Totally
to.
understand. No,
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine. I
Yeah.
totally get.
But thank you for asking, because that's
Yeah.
a great question, is write those down and just send it to that, certification side, and they should be able to definitely bring back and support you with that.
And
Yeah,
I will
great.
say
Thanks.
that once, I don't know if everybody has started the application process, but once you open the application and begin it, you have 365 days to complete it. So some people get in there and they're like, this is too intimidating. I can't even look at this right now. So I would highly recommend that if you haven't already started that process, go ahead and click in there, start your application, start gathering all your things. Like Kat was saying, you have to do a little bit of writing. Like Kelly said, your references, that sort of stuff. Start preparing those people a little bit, because it's not just a really quick Likert scale sort of thing. They do have to write a little bit about you. It's not going to take them 4 hours to do, but it probably takes about 10 to 20 minutes for them to complete it. And you can track that all in your application, but I would highly recommend going ahead and at least opening the application process to start gathering all your things.
Yeah, because it kind of sets the mindset of what am I going to need, and then you're like, oh, I want to take the exam tomorrow, and you can't do that. So
Right.
that way you have that information. Okay, I think that's the end of this, session. Thanks for, hanging on for a little bit longer while we thought through those, queries. And again, you have a lot of those resources in the, Moodle, the CHSE handbook that's there, and on the website as well. That breaks down a lot, and there's hyperlinks to go to.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Good luck on your CHSE journey.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ladies. Appreciate all your help.
Have a
Take
great rest
care.
of your week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Kelly. Bye.